Next we turn to actor Anna Manahan, who died recently.
But my first company, you see, was a fit-up company.
Talking about her life in the theatre here with Mike Murphy.
Who was in that?
Oh, Jeffrey Golden, Maura Deedy, all the Johnny Hoy, all the people, you know. Seamus Brannock was director as Jimmy Walsh, yes.
Yes.
And during that time, I did a season up in Bangor, and a man came from that time the other night, after all these years, and he came along a few nights later and left a present of a book for me, John B. Keane's biography, because I mentioned several times. And they're coming out of the past. It's wonderful. But I was chosen by Gabriel Pascal for an Irish film company. It didn't happen. There was a change of government. And so I went to London and came back. Then my sister died. And I went with Barry Casson and Nora Lever, the company they had in Limerick, for a season where I met my late husband. And in that this is the way the threads go. In that company was Carolyn Swift. And Alan Simpson, she wasn't long married, her husband, came down to see a show. And he put me into the back burner of his mind. And she wrote a play called The Millstone, and was put on, he directed it in Dunleary, in I think it was 1950. And Coralie Carmichael was playing the lead, and she said to me, "Have you ever played in Dublin?" No, I said, "This is my first time." Now, I was about 2 years on stage then or so. And she introduced me to Hilton and Michael, which began my 7 years work with the Gate, in which I learned so much. Hilton was a great teacher.
Anna Manahan's greatest achievement, perhaps, she won international acclaim with her performance in Martin McDonagh's The Beauty Queen of Leenane. It won a Tony Award for her role in the play on Broadway in 1998.
Hello, good evening and welcome. This is Kevin Hawke with a special edition of Theatre Nights on Broadway in association with Fitzpatrick's Hotels, New York. This evening, Tony Award-winning actress Anna Manahan, who's enjoying success at the Walter Kerr Theatre in Beauty Queen of Leenane. It's a long run.
A fantastic run. I miss home, and I miss the people at home, but it has been simply extraordinary, an experience to remember all my life.
Did the play change at all since I saw it in the Olympia during the festival?
No, the play has kept its production so firm, and it has been successful everywhere, but the Americans have just fallen for it in such a big way. It's the biggest hit in years and years and years on Broadway.
Anna, audiences here, how do they compare with London and Dublin? And you mentioned Sydney, now you were also in Australia.
They've all been wonderful, but of course the Irish audiences are the best in the world. But coming a very close second, certainly for this play, are the Americans. But everywhere we've played this play, it's astonishing that in this so-called sophisticated age, people talk back to us on the stage, say, don't give it to her, no, screeching.
Yes.
It's amazing what this play does. It's quite unique.
It is.
In the reactions it gets from the audience.
She was, of course, to win the much-coveted Tony Award for her part in that production.
The Tony Award now. Just talk me through that night when you heard, when the announcement was made, when you heard you got the award.
The whole thing was, it's as pressurized now as the Oscar. It's also reckoned to be a higher honor than the Oscar, because the Oscar goes out to groups of voters, whereas the Tony is voted by 700 professionals, actors, directors, scenic designers, all the writers. So it's hard-nosed professionals who vote this, and it's very... We had a whole series of events and suppers and things with press and people talking to us. But you never know. And I was being, they were saying on television and the press that I was a shoo-in, that I was going to get it. But the more they said that, the more I believed I wouldn't. And I sat there that night with my heart in my throat. I said, no, I'm not going to get this. And Joel Grey, whom I loved in Cabaret, I saw him years ago as the Master of Ceremonies, and he was the person who pulled the name out of the envelope. And he said my name, and a war whoop went up, and somebody shouted, "Mon Colleen," through the... and I just flew up the steps, and I made my speech with many radio station people say it was the best speech of the Tonys, but it was from my heart anyway. But I was so choked that when we were walking off stage, I said to Noel Gray, "I loved you in Cabaret." He said, "Thank you." I said, "I have a pain in my heart." And he said, "Yes, isn't it great?" And when I came up, I was dazed, and I was looking at everybody, and I was saying, "I won. I won. I won." I mean, it is the highest honour. I think it's greater than the Olivier. And to see the competition one was up against. And some of them were actors who were beloved by the Americans and by the American critics. I thought, and indeed there was one actress who shall be nameless who was canvassing.
Really?
Oh, canvassing.
My goodness.
She was a former winner. I thought, well, what chance have I get somebody who's canvassing? But God bless the American theatre wing, they gave it to me.
And you were nominated before for one.
I was
nominated for Lovers, wasn't it?
For Lovers. So I came back 30 years later and got it.
Wasn't it great?
But this was not an overnight success. She had served a long apprenticeship, as she told Mike Murphy in this interview.
At the end of 70, I had a long tenure with the National Theatre in London. Now, I'm not saying, Michael, that I cannot. I have in very structured areas, film, television, and that. But I am saying, although my Bessie Burgess in London was nominated for the Olivier Award, which would be the
it is now the Olivier Award.
Sweat Award.
The Sweat Award, yeah.
And all that. But what I said to you earlier was, I think, there are exceptions, but I think that my best work has been where I could fly.
Where you could fly.
And I said to Jim Nolan, when he come to, I said, "Thank you for allowing me to fly."
Yeah.
I was flying in
Did you ever fly on television, do you feel?
Oh, yes. I think one of the best performances, apart from, I mean, there have been, the Irish RM and that, but one of the best performances of my whole career, which I don't know many people in Ireland saw, but which gave me great kudos in England, was Cora in Blind Justice, that big series, and it was the first one, was an hour and a half. And recently somebody showed it to me in London, Michael, and I say with due humility, when I looked at myself on the screen, I thought, gosh, am I as good as that still? And it was 86. It frightened me.
Yeah.
It was so real, and I thought, maybe I can't do that anymore. But I never think I can do it until I get up there and it starts to happen, you know. And Peter Sheridan said to me the first night, "Keep it as tight as that," he said. He said, "It's one of the best performances I've seen in Dublin in a long time." And then he put a thing before great that I can't say over the air.
But we can imagine.
Blank, blank, great.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that from the younger directors. That's...
Well, I remember, Anna, I mean, when you talk about flying and all of that, and I remember many years ago in The Rose Tattoo and in various other plays where you were playing deeply emotional women, very emotional women, and Cry the Believers, you remember Penn play?
Indeed.
And The Rose Tattoo, and I think they followed one after the other, if I'm not too mistaken, they were very close, but and you had to go through the gamut every night. Now, I mean, you were, as they say nowadays, knackered at the end of the evening, you know, because... And you were able to do the heavily emotional pieces with such seeming facility. It was not a facility, it was a talent. But you could cry. You were able to draw on all of this every night, night after night. You could do it.
Yes.
And did it take a lot out of you? Was it technique? Was it emotion?
Oh no, you have to. There's a certain amount of technique, but I have found the best way to act, and it's not the easy way to act. But you've got to start at the beginning and go through it all every night. And that's what I do in Alice as well. You start at the beginning, because I'm on stage all night, go through it all. But Noel Brown said to me the other night, "You have more stamina than Natalie and myself put together." That was very nice of her. But, of course, what I don't do, Michael, even when I was young, and when I was doing Rose Tattoo, and I was only about 30ish at the time, I don't lash around the energy during the day. Couldn't do that. And I learned that from Cyril Cusack, who was a very, very good friend of mine and very, very kind to me with his advice. And he said to me many years ago, keep your energy for your work. So that when we were doing the Rose Tattoo, when we were up in Belfast, the others would be out in Bangor, but I'd be sitting on the grass in front of Stormont, just sitting in the sun or reading a book.
Conserving your energy.
even then conserving my energy for using it.
Right.
And as I say, you would have to start, in order to get as deeply as that into the emotions of something, you have to start on it freshly each night. You can't somehow assimilate it.
Yeah.
It would be phony.
And that's all from the RTE Sound Archives for this morning. More voices from the archives at the same time on Sunday morning next. Thank you for listening this morning, and good morning.